So how was the guide season? It doesn't seem like too long ago. Abby and I were up there, and you gave us some good tips about fishing some of the rivers up there. And it was a little bit early because it was June, but super fun. Had a great time up there, and you had some clips that went viral. That one of the mouse fishing one of that. It kind of looked like and reminded me of those brown trout, those voracious brown trout that come out down south that just destroy anything that's on top of the surface there, mouse wise or rodent wise. But yeah, do you have any highlights from the summer season?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably been my busiest season I've ever had. We pretty much guided from, I think my outfitter started like middle of May, and I had my last trip this past Tuesday in October. So it was pretty busy all the way through. I know that from like July 19th through the 17th of August, I had like 2 days off. So we were
Oh
just
man.
grinding. I think my longest stretch was like 15 in a row. But yeah, it was a super good season. Um, it started out pretty slow when you were up here. It was just kind of getting going. It seemed like it had a slower start. But once we got into, later June, into July, things started picking up. We started having some of the first salmon come in, and it seemed like once those kings came in, things started to pick up. Fish started to get better. I don't know if it seemed like a lot of the trout were still out in the main river and were taking their time to
Mm-hmm.
come in. Once they came in, it's almost like, oh man, you can almost sense it. Like there's just more life here.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, once the Kings came in, started dumping eggs, it was pretty much a game on from then. And we had a good pink here this year. Just so many pinks you could walk across the surface of the water. It seemed like
Yeah.
they were everywhere. Good chum run this year. We got probably more chums in the boat this year than I've ever had. And then our silver fishing was a little bit slower. I think I might have put a dozen in the boat. They were really late this year. We had some restrictions later in the season because they were so low in numbers. But yeah, it had a good time with that. And then yeah, the trout fishing was good, and it's still surprisingly good now here into October. It seems like we were still finding fish pretty far upriver because they come up in the spring and then they go back down in the fall, but we are still finding them, several miles upriver. Most of them are down low, but it's surprising how spread out they still are.
Mm-hmm. What's the fly variation? So, like your May fly box versus kind of toward the end here when you were finishing up, how much did that change?
It changes quite a bit. In May, June, you're fishing more of those faded eggs from last year, your flesh patterns. Then we start having those salmon fry headed down. So you start fishing your, bait fish imitations, your woolly buggers, stuff like that. And then after those fry are kind of leaving mid to late June, you start going more towards your lamprey imitations. So
Mm-hmm.
your dolly llamas, your bigger streamers, fishing that around structure. King, and then that's like you were saying about the mouse video. That's when we kind of get into our mousing. Seems to be that late June, early to mid July. They don't have the food source of the fry. The water's dropping a little bit. You kind of need that good water where it's low. They're in the cover. It's clear water. You're not having that runoff from winter.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when we throw those mice. And like that video that went viral, that was taken. That was actually last year. I want to say like early July. And then I think I sent you one too. That was about that same time frame. Water was low. Fish were starting to look up a little bit more. Never actually put a fish in the boat this year on a mouse. I didn't fish it a ton.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely, if they were coming up, especially if they were hitting like the indicator or something, that's when, okay, boom, we got to switch over and try that mouse. But so yeah, mid July, that's kind of when the mousing takes place. And then you get into late July, the kings are in, they're starting to spawn those trout. You'll start seeing them move out of their cover, and they're going to follow those kings wherever they can. And they're sitting right there ready, waiting for those kings to start dropping eggs, and they're like grabbing those eggs as soon as they come out. And then you got your pinks coming in. The thing with the pinks and the chums is there's so many fish in the river, they'll push those trout out of the way, whether they're actually like nudging them out or the trout are just like, I'm done with this. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's just too many. And you'll see those trout, like they look upset because they're like on the outside of their holes and they're
Mm-hmm.
kind of moving around. So you have a couple, 2 or 3 weeks of displacement. And then those pinks are starting to lay eggs. And that's really when things kick off because those trout are, I mean, I have some videos of trout. You've got like a, I don't know, 3 or 4 pound pink right here on one side, and then there's literally a trout that size or bigger parallel. And anywhere that pink moves, that fish move right with them. I've seen them just sitting behind reds. Like you'll see a whole shallow gravel bar full of pinks, and then you can sit there with polarized glasses. Like, okay, there's a bow, there's a bow, there's a bow, and you
Mm-hmm.
can actually fish the trout that time of year with a bead fishing right behind them and picking those things out. And a lot of times you'll be sight fishing to one, and then all of a sudden your bobber will go down. You'll set the hook, and there was a trout, a few
Mm-hmm.
feet away. You can see. And I've seen at that time of year when we're fishing those fresh eggs, those trout will move 10, 15 feet. If you have a bead bouncing down through a hole and that fish sees it, I've seen them move a long ways and go intercept it. And it's really cool when you see a 20+ inch rainbow like eat your bead in
Man,
like 4 or 5 inches of water.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's always the coolest thing to watch something come up or move to it, and you're just like, oh my gosh, here we go, here we go. That's an excitement that you don't see anywhere else. When people talk about my favorite type of fishing, I say, well, that's right there. Sure, king
Mhm.
salmon fishing is unbelievable. It's so much more fun, but you don't have that same feeling you get when you see the fish move to it. So even though it's a 12-inch or 20-inch trout, that you intend to release, it's still unbelievable to watch that happen. There's so much more suspense rather than just watch if you're trolling, well, watch it just come out of the clip and it's taken line, then you fight it. But when you are fishing and there's so many fish in there, like you said, you can walk across their backs. How often do you get foul hooks? Because you can like do a dead drift, but then as soon as it starts to swing a little bit, like how do you keep from just hooking up on or foul hooking a pink every time?
It just happens sometimes. A lot of times with the bead when you're fishing for trout, you're not hooking as many. You'll hook a few, and a lot of times you'll actually floss those pinks because those pinks are just kind of sitting there with their mouths open. A lot of times they'll hook pinks doing that. But it seems like when we're snagging fish unintentionally, it's a lot of times when you're casting and stripping for pinks. We got a lot of folks, they've never caught a salmon or, they're just stoked to catch any fish and they're casting, streamers and stuff and stripping it back. And you're going to hook a few that are foul hooked. And a lot of times, if it's a pink or something small or in slow water, I'll just have that client reel that fish in as fast as possible, maybe grab the leader and pull it in fast. Sometimes I'll have a client bring me their line. If I can grab that fly line, just give it a quick pop, I can pop that
Mm.
fly out of the side of the fish or it'll snap off. Um, but yeah, it's just snapping them off for popping them off, getting them off as fast as we can and getting them back in the water.
What kind of leader are you using?
For salmon, a lot of times I'm just going straight from my fly line to like a section of 25-pound maxima to a section of 12-pound maxima. And that's maybe in 3 feet because
Mm.
those salmon are super picky and um, they're a little bit easier to cast those bigger bugs when you've got more fly line out as opposed to more leader and tippet. And then for trout, I do like a 25-pound maxima for my leader material, drop that down to like 15 to 12 to 10 in
Mhm.
about 8 feet or so.
Yeah, that the tapered leader 9-foot sections. Those are beautiful for presenting dry flies to trout down south. But up here, just kind of you need some rugged, strong stuff. You're not worried about presentation so much as just getting that heavy fly or get that heavy rig out there, and it's not artful. It's just put it where it needs to go and make it happen.
Yeah, for sure. And those are expensive too. A
Mm.
tapered leader costs 4 or 5, $6 a piece. Whereas I buy one spool of 25-pound maxima. I've actually been using the same spool for 3 seasons. And then a section of 15 I'll go through in a season, and then a section of 12 and 10 I'll go through like 2 spools in a season. So I mean it lasts a long time. And I think they're more abrasion resistant. That
Hmm.
Maxima is pretty strong stuff. I can honestly, I mean, you fish that river, it's full of snags.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of times I always have clients point that rod tip whenever they get snagged on a log or something, pop it off. And a lot of times it's actually going to bend the hook out instead,
Hmm.
bend that hook back and and keep going.
Yeah, that when you get snagged on those submerged branches, and some of them come out of nowhere, you don't even know what the heck is going on, but you have to be close to that because that's kind of where they're holding. I had a couple that I had a pretty successful day. One of the first days I was up there, super awesome, and then the water dropped 6 or so inches, and then I saw where I was fishing. I thought, oh my gosh, how did I not get snagged every single time? But the current was just swift enough to move it like up and over the little branches, but just put it in there very tantalizingly. And I was using a Dalai Lama, and man, once you can see where you're fishing, it's one of those things that the fish or the river is revealed to you, and you can fish it so much more effectively once you know that. And then you think,
Mhm.
man, anything I caught before was just probably beginner's luck because I thought it looked like this, but it was nothing at all like I thought it was.
Yeah, yeah, and then that's the benefit of being able to float the river every day when I'm out there is like you start to recognize where those snags are, and they'll be like fishing with clients and they'll be like, "All right, everybody lift their lines up," and they're like, "Oh, why are we lifting them up?" Like, trust me, you don't want to fish here. I don't want to fish here. I don't want to have to retie. So I mean, there are whole sections of the river, like there'll be whole corners. I'm like, "Hey guys, we're gonna have not a very great chance of catching a fish here, but a great chance of losing our gear.
Hmm.
So we're not even going to fish this 100 yards. It's not worth our time. It's not worth our effort. But that is something you get if you fish it every day.
Are there some spots that hold fish, but to get them with clients would probably be impossible because it's a very specific angle, very specific depth, or maybe you would have to get out and you'd have to fish it from just a really difficult spot and approach. Do you have some of those spots where you go back and fish by yourself just to kind of see if it's doable for clients?
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Especially, there's certain areas where there are log jams and you can't even cast. You have to kind of be able to almost like with a pendulum, like
Mm.
flip your line right into those log jams and just jig it just perfectly to get that thing to eat. So there are places where I can see a fish or I know there's fish there, but I won't even mess with it just because I know it's going to be tough. And unless I've got a more experienced angler in the boat
Mhm.
that can do it, a lot of times I'm like, I'm not even going to mess with it right now.
Some of those spots too that you have the cut banks and it's so swift, you think, man, I know there have to be fish there, but I just can't. I don't think I'm getting down fast enough, and I don't think I'm heavy enough. It seems like you could have a cannonball, and it would still, you'd only get there very briefly. So, how do you deal with understanding whether or not you're getting down fast enough, and how much do you give some of those areas that are cut banks that are deep that hold fish? Do you mess around with it for a long time? Do you try to figure it out, or you just kind of give her a good shot and move on?
Um, so for the weight situation, I always try to run heavier than I might think. Like I run two number seven split shot. I want to be tapping the bottom. So if I'm fishing an indicator, I want to be able to see that every once in a while that bobber just kind of like bounce, 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 bounce. I don't want to see it just going with the flow because I know at that point I'm not anywhere near the bottom. So going as deep as I can. And to be honest, in that specific body of water, I try to stay away from that heavier stuff. So, back home in the lower 48, I was be fishing those outside corners. But it seems like up here, especially this summer, those outside corners have more, logs and more
Hmm.
junk in there that you're going to get tangled on, hooked on. But also, it seems like there's almost too much current for some of those fish to hold in there. So if I see a really nice cut bank, I might actually come maybe 3 or 4 feet off of that and fish just to the inside
Hmm.
of the that heavy stuff, right, kind of where that slow and that fast water meet. It seems like a lot of times you'll get a better presentation. There'll be more fish holding there, and there'll be less likelihood of snagging on something. So getting down deep as heavy as I can, and then coming just a little bit off those banks, unless I am fishing something like a mouse where I know I'm not going to get snagged
Hmm.
up. I'll just pop that thing as tight to that bank as I can and skate that thing back.
Yeah, I really like those inside edges because if there is just one rock that piles up a little bit and creates a little bit of slack water right there, and they can just hang right there and go and shoot out. So those inside edges are awesome. But I always end up throwing into the deep outer just to see, just to see if something can come out, and it almost never works, and I always get snagged up. I mean, so I don't know, but just that temptation, just fish that inside edge really, really well. But I don't know, I just have to go for it sometimes, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. That was one thing last year I noticed. So that would have been my second season on that river. One day I just wasn't doing good on that outside edge. And I just had this thought. I'm like, I'm gonna flip the boat 180 degrees. Flipped it 180 degrees, and the next like two or three casts, boom, we started
Mm.
catching fish. So just trial and error.
Was there something big that you learned this summer that made you think, okay, I got this more figured out, or some other sort of tactic or something that you found to be super, super effective that you're really excited to really hone in or use next year?
From billion-dollar ad budgets and arena naming rights to tens of thousands of retail locations, big wireless providers spend big to appear like they're your only option. How do they afford it all? That big bill you get at the end of every month. Mint Mobile had a different idea. Instead of brick and mortar overhead, Mint Mobile is online only. What does that mean for you? A whole lot of savings, because wireless plans from Mint Mobile start at just $15 a month. That's unlimited talk, text, and data for just $15 a month. You'll save enough that you can get a brand new rod and reel for the upcoming season. For anyone who just hates their phone bill, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. All plans come with unlimited talk, text, and high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan, and you can even keep your same phone number along with all of your existing contacts. By going online only and eliminating traditional costs of retail, Mint Mobile passes significant savings on to you. Switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service starting at just $15 a month. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/waypoint. That's mintmobile.com/waypoint. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/waypoint.
I think that's a tough one. Definitely the extra weight getting down deep, I think was a big thing, especially as we started getting into the bead drop. Just getting down deeper as fast as I can. But I also do think that um, knowing the type of water that a lot of the fish like to hold in, and it seems like, I talk about it a lot when I talk to my clients. I'm like, hey, this is the water we're fishing, and that's the mid-river drop. So I've started to notice that these fish like wherever it goes from shallow to deep. If you can see that nice tan gravelly bottom, that may be up to 4 or 5 feet of water, but if it just suddenly drops off to like abyss where it's like dark bluish green and you can't see the bottom, like right where you'll lose that clarity and you just can't make out bottom detail, that's where I seem to find probably 90% of my fish. So there's this one run in particular I can picture. Every time I see a guide boat or a recreational angler go over it, they're floating down the middle of the river and they're casting to the edge. But in this stretch, it goes from, it's kind of like deeper on river right, and there's a cut bank, and I mean, there are fish there, and it's really shallow in the middle. And then in the middle of the river, there's a two logs, and it just like a funnel, and it just
Mm.
drops off into probably 10 feet of water. And everybody's always fishing that cut bank on the outside. But I always bring my boat, and my boat is probably only in a foot of water, sometimes dragging bottom. And I have clients fish right into that abyss. And I can't think of a time that we floated that where we didn't at least hook into a fish or land two or three out of there. And just on my last trip, I think we pulled 3 or 4 fish right out of that hole. And that's just knowing there's that sudden drop off. So I always look for those drop offs where I just start to lose that bottom detail. And then a big thing is casting upstream of it. A
Mm.
lot of people, they see that and they're going to put that cast right where it loses detail. But by the time your flies or your beads or whatever hit the bottom or get down to depth, you're already past where those trout are,
Yeah.
past. So the big thing is casting, 6 to 10 feet upstream. Let that fly or your bead or whatever hit the bottom, tap, 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 tap. And then as soon as you go off the drop off, you're right into that trout's face and they're ready to scoop it
Mm.
up.
What's the information sharing like? So if you figure something else like that, and there's a guy, someone that you're guiding with, you think, hey man, I'm fishing this spot like this. This has been awesome. This fly, this depth, this wedge, or I found this other thing. Do you share a lot of that stuff, hoping to get some stuff back, or are you kind of just, hey, you figure it out, I'll figure it out, but you got to fish the river the way you want to fish it too. And how does sharing go?
I try to be pretty open with people, especially people that I know really well, especially, my outfitter, Shane and I mean, we'll be on the water every day and we'll literally call each other 2 or 3 times a day and be like, hey, what are you finding them on? Where are you finding them? Hey, I'm leaving this spot. This is where I was finding them. So, people I'm really close to, I'll share information with. Other people, it just kind of depends on, that relationship with that person. But yeah, I'm usually pretty open, like, hey, I'm fishing this bead color and this is kind of the water I'm fishing them. So I
Yeah.
try to be pretty open.
Yeah, it's good to be friendly. Yeah, you get a reputation for being someone who's friendly and might give you some tips, but a lot of times the tips are very ambiguous, which is good
Mhm.
because if you told everybody everything about how to fish it, then it's you're going to be corking yourself. So the same thing with hunting. It's like, and Brandon and I were talking about this on that moose hunt or his moose recap. When you're out there, it's fine to be helpful. It's nice to be helpful to other people. But
Yeah.
if you become the type of person who just shares everything to anyone, then you're not going to get much information back because people know that it's going to go to everyone. So it's that balance of being helpful, being friendly versus oversharing.
Yeah. Well, and especially, if I see, let's say like there's a local family that I might see on the river a couple times a year and I'm like, hey, how you guys doing? Like, oh, we haven't done really good. We've caught one or two. I'll go walk up to people and say, hey, here's 4 or 5 beads that I've been using. I want to see you guys have some success on the water and try to share that. But I've also noticed that you could tell some people exactly what you're doing, where you're going, exact bead color. This is the hole you want to stand in, and they'll go and they won't catch fish.
Hmm.
So a lot of it too just kind of comes down to experience on that specific body of water, and being there with somebody who knows it and how to fish it. So there are times I'll be more open just because I could tell you where to go, but you still might not be able to hit it exactly how you need to.
Yeah, that's not an arrogance thing. That's an experience thing. There are a couple
Mhm.
spots where I like to fish too, and I try to explain to people how I do. Like if I'm fishing with my wife, and there's like a specific thing that I'm looking at, a very specific, like where the water is coming up over the rocks, and it's that little small white spot. That's what I'm aiming for. But it's so
Mhm.
hard to explain. It's so hard to articulate, and then how far upriver feels good versus, and then when do you mend it exactly? Just all that feel and all that stuff that you just accumulate that knowledge. And for someone else, it looks like you're doing exactly what they're doing or that they're doing what you're doing, but it's just subtly different and makes a big difference. And you just can't, just different.
Yeah. And I think that's an important thing I learned this year too is, as I've been guiding, I think I just finished my 6th season. I was always taught, don't touch the rod, don't fish, don't do this. But a lot of times I find that clients were like, hey, I want to see you fish. And initially I'd be like, no, I don't want to touch it. I don't want to mess up the hole or whatever. But I have found that the more that I'll take the rod and I'll cast it and retrieve it and I'll fish that rod, my clients will pick up on things that I'm doing that I haven't even explained to them. It just
Mm-hmm.
kind of comes second nature. And they're like, oh, okay, I see how you're doing that now. I'll give that rod back to the client and then they'll be able to pick up on a little bit faster. So sometimes they do need that, visual, like this is how I cast, this is what I'm doing, this is how I strip set, this is how I fight the fish. That way they can kind of see how to do it. Maybe something I can't explain very well, like you said.
Yeah, there have definitely been times where I've explained something, and then when I do it myself, it's different, and I think, oh man, that's totally different than what I said. I thought I was doing this, but actually, what I was doing was something totally different. Whether it be as something is swinging out, or the angles I had, or just something about what I told my wife to do. Yeah, and then I think, oh, my bad, or this is what I think, and let me just double check and actually do it. But yeah, seeing it is so huge because those words can be super ambiguous. Have you ever been wakeboarding before?
Mm-mm, I have
Yeah,
not.
I only went once, and a buddy was trying to explain to me what to do, and he said, "Well, when you're ready, let me know, and then I'll gun it, and you just pop up." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean you just pop up? He's like, yeah, you just pop up. Like, well, am I supposed to be like in some sort of stance? Like, do I flex my core, or what do I do? He's like, no, you just pop up. It's such an ambiguous thing, and once you get it, other people are like, yeah, you just pop up. Like, I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means, and I could watch people, and still I don't know what that means because I've never done it. And if I were to get it right, so I've never successfully got up on a wakeboard. I just face plant every single time because I don't know how to just pop up. But yeah, that can be frustrating. Have there been clients that you could sense were getting a little bit frustrated, so you have to either like back off or give them the hey sport, or just pull off to have some food or get a snack in them or something like that?
Yeah. One thing I noticed that I used to do when I first started, and I'll sometimes catch myself, is like I'll be on a client and then I'll be like almost every cast, like, oh, do this different, do this different, do this different. And I feel like sometimes it starts to wear on them. And so there'll be times like I had a guy not too long ago, he just couldn't get his cast down. And I would be on him trying to get this cast. And eventually I'm like, you know what? I've been talking to this guy every cast for 10 minutes, and I'll walk away. I'm like, I know he's probably not going to get a good drift. There's a chance he'll luck into a fish, but I'm like, I'm just going to let him do his thing. I'm going to let him practice, play around with it. It just, if you're on somebody too much, it starts to wear on them and they're not having the goodest time. Maybe they're getting upset at you a little bit. So yeah, I've learned to just kind of show them what I can, give them some pointers, and then kind of step back and then come in every once in a while again. Like, hey, let me show you something here. Let me tell you what you can do here. Like you said, take a break, eat something, let the river, calm down a little bit, maybe let things warm up. And those are things also like, hey, let's take a break here for a second. Let's have some lunch. We got a good lunch spot. Water's still cold. Let's let it warm up. When in reality, a lot of times it is giving that person that break. It is letting let them calm down. And I think I've said it before, but it's like a lot of times when that person wants it so badly, or they want to figure it out so badly, they almost try too hard. And that's when you get frustrated. That's when you don't catch as many fish. As I think it all revolves around attitude. And like if you're just super chill about it, you're just in it for the experience, that's when you're going to have your success, whether that is catching a fish or learning something or having a good time. And when I can break somebody out of that, where they're just making these casts and they're just dropping F-bombs. I can't get this thing figured out. I'm getting all tangled up. And it's like, let's just take a break, change conversation. What do you do for work? How is your family doing? Like, how has your trip been? When you can break them out of that and get them away from that kind of thinking, that's when the trip becomes a lot more successful, I think.
Yeah. You sounded like a teacher right there. It was my friends that are teachers who also guide during the summer. They say the same thing. They love teaching. They love helping people achieve certain things. And while I would never want to teach someone how to fish or be a guide or anything like that, you totally get that. Some kids, the first essay that they turn in, you think, oh boy, we've got a long way to go. But how can we get this first little win so we can get some confidence, so we can build from there? Because if you just beat him over the head with every single thing, like, oh, this should have been a semicolon and not a comma, it's like, you're just killing the kid, so it's got to be, hey, this is good. You understand what's going on here, something we can build on to help us be successful. That's so important. But being able to read people is so huge. I haven't been out with too many guides, but maybe half dozen or so, or maybe a dozen, I don't know. But the ones who are able to kind of sense that and are good people are the most successful ones, the ones I've had a lot of fun with, because they kind of get it. They it's not silly. It's not just, I'm out here, I'm going to make the same amount of money, hope I get some tips or something like that. It's people who know and understand, keep it entertaining, but also keep it dialed in. Like, we're out here to fish, and they can sense that in me. They know that I want to do well, so they'll give me some opportunities to do that. And it's cool to have people who are energetic and excited about that. Is it easy to keep up that speed and that motivation and that high level functioning by the time August and September roll around, when it's been months and months?
Yeah, there is a saying, it's called angry August. By the time you get late in the season, there, I don't think I've ever had a time where like I've ever, just completely lost it or anything. But, by the end of the season, you are getting tired. you are kind of, it feels like you're running through the motions, but you just, got to keep it in your head like, hey, I might have been floating this river for the last 6, 7 weeks in a row, but this is my client's first day. This is maybe their only trip to Alaska. I had some 80-year-olds in the boat this year, or it might be a kid. I had, some kids 10, 11, 12. This is their first time ever fly fishing. And it's like, I need to give them the best experience I can and give them the best me that I can be, both guide wise and personality, to show them the best trip I can, because this might have been their dream trip that they've been trying to do their whole lives, or this could be some kid's first introduction to fishing. And I don't want to ruin either one of those. So I just always try to be as positive as I can. There are a few times that I'm like, oh, like, how could you have missed that bite? How can you not put it right in that drift perfectly? But you just kind of like, you know what? Is what it is. I've got another hole around the bend, and I'm just gonna figure it out as we go.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts about fishing before we move into hunting?
No, I think it was a great season. I had a lot of fun. Um, yeah, I'm looking forward to next year. I kind of like this break right now. Give the body a little bit of a break, and the the long drives and stuff. Sleeping in the trailers. It's nice having a trailer, but it feels kind of bougie when I go back home. I'm like, man, I've been living in this little tiny trailer for the past few days, and I go home and I don't have to set up my shower every night. I don't have to use a bucket for the bathroom. I actually have a flush toilet nearby and electricity. So, no, it was a good season. I learned a lot, and I was thinking like coming back next year will be my fourth season on this river. And I'm starting to feel like I'm kind of getting into a pretty good groove of what to expect. I've been able to narrow down my fly boxes. Like, all right, I have one pattern in these two colors. I have another pattern in these three colors, and then these are my top probably dozen bead colors, and that's all I'm going to fish. And I like right now I've got a baggie right here. I've just been cranking out Dalai Lamas in the same color, just
Nice.
as many as I can, and I'm just going to do half a dozen a day, um, and just prep for next year. That way I know what I need at this point. I know when to fish it, what to do, and I don't have to sit every night in the trailer and tie flies every day.
How many nights were you in the trailer this summer?
Well, I'm not sure. I would try to do 2 or 3 nights, go home for a night, come back the next day, do 2 or 3 nights, go back the next day. So figuring probably 4 to 5 nights a week. I'd be in the trailer from June till August.
How long was that? How long would the drive have been if you tried to drive it every day?
Yeah, it's an hour and a half one way, so it's 3 hours a day.
It's rough.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah, totally.
What would be your guess about how many flies you lost this summer? Are you talking obviously hundreds, right?
Oh, hundreds. I mean, there are days you'd probably lose a dozen and a half to 2 dozen. And so you do that every day. Like that's why I cranked out, I think I think it was more like 10 to 12 dozen woolly buggers the last winter. And I had probably 2 dozen left. And then that was when I fished them was in, the first part of June, basically, and last part of June. So I mean, you're probably losing 100 dozen a year,
Wow.
something like that.
How
Yeah,
many
a lot.
how many rods did you break?
Knock on wood, I haven't broken a rod this year. Not that I can remember. I did break one rod, the eyelet out of a rod in transport, but other than that, I don't think I snapped a rod this year.
None of your clients did either?
Nope.
Wow.
I mean, there were a few times where they'd be snagged on something and they're just got that thing fully corked. I'm like, please drop the rod, please drop the rod. And yeah, I don't think I had any break this year. So Shane, my boss, can't give me any crap. So I always seem to break rods. I think my first year up here, I broke like 13 rods
Oh,
or
wow.
something. But yeah, it was my first season. I haven't broken one, but season's not over yet. So knock on wood.
Any reels?
Yes. Yep. I actually got one right here that some screws popped out and I just could never get it tightened. I think I had one that seized up on me this year too, but other than that,
Yeah. it's a little silty, and then on some of those beaches it can be sandy, and that stuff is just terrible on the reels. Not as bad as salt water, but that can be real tough on there.
Yeah, yeah, I've had to take a few reels apart this year and either, re-grease them, re-lube them up, or wash salt and silt out of them. At the start of the season, I actually found two spinning rods that were broken down, like wrapped together, like they were on somebody's boat or something. And I found them in the river. And one of the rods was broken, and one of the reels was, so gummed up that it wasn't usable. But one of them I pulled out. I mean, it was absolutely full of sand, and I took it apart and washed it all out, re-greased it, re-oiled it, and had like probably 18-pound braid on there. And I just kept using it, and it worked really well. Didn't even replace the line. Yeah, the sand is tough on stuff, and just trying to keep that clean and keep it going as long as you can.
So how was the first hunting trip? Like, you've been fishing, obviously thinking about hunting once in a while, but the first day that you got to go out, what was it, and how'd you do?
I went out. So I did a lot of just like evening hunts for moose, stuff that was close. I did a couple duck trips, but again, those are just early mornings. If I didn't have a trip that day, or it was, after a trip, and early September, you're getting off the water about 6-ish, and it's getting dark at like 9 to 9:30. So you got like 3.5 hours of daylight. So I hunted a lot in the afternoons, and this is my first season moose hunting by myself. Last year I had gone, and I'd had my outfitter was with me, and we were just we were fun hunting, hunting for ourselves, and we were on a week-long moose hunt, and that was my first time ever hunting moose, and I pretty much had him there the whole time. So this is my first season going out on my own, finding a spot off the road system I could go to, understanding the terrain, understanding calling, and how to figure all that out. So that first, probably 2 or 3 weeks of moose season, it was all those afternoon trips, driving somewhere, running through the motions of, all right, this is the kind of terrain I need to walk into. This is how I should call, or, how I should scrape, and how I should sound like a moose, what I should look for. So the first part of the season was a big learning curve for me. But yeah, so it was good. And having a few little wins. One night I called in a cow moose. I don't know if I called it in or if it happened to be, right place, right time, but I felt that was a kind of a little win, because I had found this spot on onX. I'd walked in, I was this giant meadow. Like, this meadow was so wide, my rangefinder couldn't even read the other side. And it was all walking through like, knee deep, just squishy grass. And I walked up to where this meadow kind of narrowed. There was some taller, birch in there about head high. And I walk in and I'm calling, and all of a sudden I hear it, whoosh, 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 and I look over, and there's a cow, I don't know, probably 120 yards away from me. And she walks through the opening. I'm like, oh, maybe there's a bull behind her, and two calves like side by side follow her into the meadow, and hearing them splashing around in the water, just 130 yards away was pretty cool. And just knowing that I was in the right place now, I felt confident in my calling. That was a pretty big win for me.
Yeah.
And then just smelling moose, finding moose sign, like, okay, I know this is where they're at. I know I'm looking in the right spots. It's just a matter of time until I find one.
Yeah, that can be, that early success can be awesome, because it buoys your confidence, gets you really excited about your program. But then if things don't go well after that, you think, man, maybe I didn't actually learn something. Maybe I was really lucky. And so I ran that as my program because I thought it was the right program, but I just happened to get lucky, and it was the wrong program. It's what I should not be doing whatsoever. And it can be difficult at times to stick with it, because you think, okay, I should abandon this right now. Like, this isn't good. This is not what I should be doing. But then other times you just stick with it. You say, no, this is good. This is good. This is good. Just got to be patient. Keep running it, and you'll be fine. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And you start to pick up the nuance, just like learning a river. You hear people talk about moose hunting, and once you know a little bit about it, and I haven't really done any of it, but
Mm.
talking to more people and being in the terrain and the habitat and seeing moose and think, okay, this is starting to make a little bit more sense. The terrain, the calls, the time of year, all that stuff. And I think back to when I was, starting off with black-tailed deer hunting. It was the same thing. It was, just walk around a muskeg, go to the muskeg and call. Like, well, what does that even mean, right? So how much should you call it? What should it sound like? How often should you, break in between? And then when you're in the muskeg, should you be in the muskeg, on the edge of the muskeg, hidden from the muskeg on the edge? Are they going to be out in the muskeg bedded, or are they going to be on the edge of the muskeg? So many different things that you start to learn and comprehend, and you start to really dial it in, and it's super exciting to learn that. And it's, just like learning a new river, learning a new species. It's just a lot of fun to be out there and just, you notice everything about the ecosystem, and you notice every little thing about food and cover and shade and noise and all that. And man, I love summer, but September and October can be really, really cool too.
Yeah. And I just in a different environment for me. Thick birch forests where you have a tall canopy and a bunch of like, short, stubby grass and like blow down timber and stuff I've never been in. And just the types of critters and stuff in there. Like I have these noise canceling headphones, but they amplify sound until you shoot and then it kills all sound. And there'd be times I'd be standing on this ridge and I'm like, oh, there's something walking up to me. And I reach for my gun and I'm looking, I'm like, I know I can hear something right next to me. And I look down and it amplified the sound of this little like mouse or this little vole or something running through the brush. And I'm like, wow, that
That's
sounds
pretty
like
good.
yeah. And like just those little things like that, watching, mice run around or just watching birds and stuff, those little things and having those experiences. I mean, that really made my season for me there.
Yeah, that's an iconic hunt. The moose hunt is an iconic hunt. Trout fishing in Alaska, it's iconic, and you go. There's so many things to do. It's unbelievable. It's overwhelming. We talked about that a lot before, but
Mhm.
what else you getting after? What's your next trip?
Um, Next trip, um, probably doing some archery stuff for bear. I just yesterday passed my archery certification, so now I can hunt, in archery only areas or
Nice.
archery um, like specific hunts, permits and stuff. So might try to go out and do that tomorrow to some places here local and see if I can't find a bear.
hmm Did you like who did the field day for the shooting portion of that?
I have some volunteers there at ADF and G just down at
Okay.
Rabbit Creek here in town. Yeah,
Okay. Cool.
yeah.
Yeah, we
So
don't have a place down here that does it. I think maybe it's once per year. Luckily, I'm old enough where I don't have to. All I had to do is just pass the online. Actually, I didn't even have to pass the online thing. I just took it just because. But Abby needs to take the field test thing within a year of passing that. So we're trying to figure out a time either if it's going to happen around here. Or I don't want to go all the way to Juneau just for but an archery test. But we'll see what we have to do. But she likes rifle hunting anyway. So
yeah. Yeah, no, I took it like the end of October last year, so I had until the end of this month to take it. Otherwise, I would take everything again. And it was hard last winter. It didn't seem like they had a lot of field days, and it's like a Saturday or a Sunday, and it's like it's so tough to want to give up a day off
yeah.
to go do that. But in the long run, it's totally worth it. But I think up here they do like maybe one or two a month. I want to say at least one a month. So
Mhm.
that makes it nice. And then if you miss it, at least up here, you could drive to the valley,
Yeah.
you know, towards Wasilla and do it. You could drive down to Soldotna or Seward or whatever. Never
Mhm.
having the next one
Yeah.
if you missed it.
So
But
you going black bear up high, or where are you trying to get them?
yeah, go up high. I did a lot this spring and a little bit this fall hunting off the road system where it's like pull over, glass a mountain, boom, see a bear. Last time we went out, we saw five black bears and a grizz. And it's like, oh, cool, I want to go do it. And it's like, but I have, a mile, but I have to gain 2,500 feet. And
Mm.
it's just alders all the way until you get to the Alpine. And so, I played that game a lot this year. And it's like, man, I'm spending all my time bushwhacking to get to these places. And by the time I'm there, they're either gone or the wind's bad and they've taken off. So my game plan from here on out, at least where I have been hunting, is to hit a trail. Like, don't even glass until I get to the trail, and then just find that trail that takes me to the Alpine. And as soon as I get to the Alpine, that's when I'm going to start looking. Like, I'm not even going to worry about anything else. And, talking to one of my buddies, it makes sense now. I was like, I'm looking at getting a spotter. What should I get? And he's like, honestly, I sold my spotter once I got tired of looking at animals that I couldn't get to anymore.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
So my whole plan is to find a trail into the Alpine, and once I can get above tree line, that's when I'm going to start looking for bears.
Mm-hmm. So you're on the road system, and so you can drive anywhere. Well, I mean, there's a lot of Alaska that's not accessible by road, but there are a lot of trails. But a lot of the trails seem to, I mean, they have to attract a lot of people, and then from there you're taking your Argo, your everything up it. Do you get this feeling that no matter where you go, there's going to be other people there and it's going to be crowded? And then how do you deal with that inevitability?
Yeah. I honestly, I don't have any toys. I have, a raft at my disposal and like a little single man pontoon boat in my truck. So I look for areas that are like hike-in only, like, maybe take a four-wheeler trailer or whatever to get there and then start striking off on foot. I've noticed that at least up in here in this area, if somebody can't drive to it or take a boat to it or fly to it, they're not going to go there. So I found that I've been able to separate myself from a lot of people by just walking, which is what I'm used to back home. Back home, you can't just drive a four-wheeler up to your moose, or you can't, drive it off into this swamp. But up here, you can drive anywhere. So getting away, and that was a big thing I did that a moose float this year too, like a 5-day moose float. And, we had jet boats going, up and down the river every day. Nothing terrible, but one of the last full days of our hunt, we had we thought we were back there, we had bushwhacked in, and we had a freaking airboat run right through the middle of the swamp that we were hunting. And talk about you just felt so deflated. Like, we had floated all week to this spot. This is where, when I flew over, this looked like good habitat. We had seen some moose in here, and it's like we had seen moose the day before. We had hiked back in. We had like bushwhacked for 2 miles, crossed beaver dams, and it's like last day of the hunt, and you're right where you think you need to be. And an airboat, you can hear that thing coming from like 3 miles away, just hopping beaver dams, and it's so deflating. But somebody's always going to have a toy that's bigger or better than yours and can get there. But I mean, all that being said, we did call a bull in that night, and that through the same exact swamp that airboat went through. So I mean, sometimes you just got to roll with the punches and deal with it.
What was the bull legal? Did you get a shot, or what happened with that?
So like I said, that we spent that whole day, bushwhacking. Last day of the hunt, it was a super cool float. We did a road access to road access. It was a last minute thing, threw it together. I wasn't going to go on a big moose hunt. And, I had a buddy happen to text me, and he's like, "Hey man, are you going after a moose?" I'm like, "Actually, I was thinking about doing this." And, we threw it together in like a week, dropped in. I flew over the route once to make sure, all my channels were clear. And then floated down and covered a bunch of habitat. And again, it's a whole just learning as you go. And we get to the last full day and hike in, see some cool territory. Airboat runs through, all dejected, walk back into this swamp, and where the main river was, where we had our raft and set up camp. We had kind of picked this route to get into this swamp, and we started to take this route in. And I happened to look over, and there was some flagging tape, and we walked over to the flagging tape, and somebody had actually cut a trail all the way to the swamp. I think somebody had a bear bait back there. So we just happened to pick a random beach and a swamp that we want to go to, and somebody had that path cleared. So what would have taken us probably a half hour, 45 minutes of bushwhacking, we could walk in like less than 10 minutes. So we get back to we do our big loop, start at that swamp, do this giant like 2 mile loop, come back, and there's a couple big spruce trees on the edge of the swamp. And this is probably 7 o'clock at night at this point. And my buddy I was with, his name's also Kyle. He's probably 12 to 14 feet up in the spruce tree. He's just sitting up there glassing out of this tree because he could see, probably 400 yards one way, 400 yards the other way from up there. And I'm sitting down below and, I'm cow calling, I'm grunting a little bit, just, maybe every 10, 15 minutes, just throwing out a few calls. And he's up there in the tree just looking. And I get bored and I had service. So I start texting my wife and all of a sudden I hear a roar, 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 like 15 grunts in a row. I'm like, is that what I just thought I heard? And then I did it again, just roar, roar, just like 15, just crisp, clear grunts. And I'm like, there is no way I've never heard a person make 15 grunts in a row trying to call a moose. So I'm like, hey, God, I think I hear a moose. I'm whispering out in a tree, and he's like, I can't tell. And so I'm kind of calling back. I'm kind of imitating that, throwing a bunch of grunts out, a few cow calls here and there. And I just start hearing that moose coming. He had to be several hundred yards off. I think he was in the same area that airboat went through. And that was, probably 600-700 yards. And I keep calling and I think I keep hearing him. My buddy can't quite tell. He climbs out of the tree. I'm like, dude, I'm like 99% sure this is there's a bull coming in. And he's like, dude, I can't quite tell. We're like mid sentence and you hear one clear, roar. And his eyes got so big. He's like, dude, that's an effing bull. He's coming in. And so he throws a layer back on, goes back up in the tree. And I start calling. I get a little more aggressive, grunting back. I've got a wooden canoe paddle because when you rack that thing in the brush, it sounds just like that hollow rack hitting trees. So I'm grunting, I'm raking the brush, I'm doing a few like real sexy cow calls. And that bull just coming in like, every few minutes you're hearing a brush snap or like every step, roar, 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 just coming in. And me being on the ground calling was great. And I could hear him at some points, having Kyle up in the tree looking, he couldn't always hear it, but when he heard it, I couldn't hear it. And when I could hear it, he couldn't hear it. So having that separation was really good. We can kind of keep tabs on this bull. I texted my wife a little after 8 that this bull was coming in. And, it was starting to get dark. You can hear this bull slowly working his way through this birch forest, grunting and just breaking brush. And it's probably about 8:30. I finally hear a sploosh, sploosh. He walks into the marsh, and my buddy Kyle's like, "Dude, I think he just walked into the marsh." And I was like, Can you see him?" He's like, "No, I can't quite see him." And finally, like, "Dude, I can see him." I'm like, "Is he legal?" I'm like, "Dude, he's a big bull." I'm like, "Do you think he's legal to shoot?" And he's like, "Yeah, I think he's legal, but let me confirm." And so he's like, he's right over here to your right. And I'm like, I look over here and he's like, "No, further left." No, like way left. And so I'm trying to pinpoint where this bull is on the ground because I can only see probably 50, 60 yards in front of me. And Kyle's like, "Dude, that's a big bull. He's coming in." And I can just hear this bull at this point, every step. More, more, more. And then he starts raking brush, probably 70, 80 yards. I still can't see him, but Kyle's up in the tree. He can see him. And he is just tearing this tree up. Just like, sounds like he's ripping this thing out of the ground. And just these giant snorts that just shakes like his whole body. It sounds like a dinosaur on Jurassic Park. Like this thing is just extremely loud. And he slowly works into the opening and it's like 8:45. And I can barely see. And I start seeing these antler tips walking and he's just walking into this marsh, just swaying every step. More, more, more. I'm like, "Dude, is he legal?" And he's like, "If he's 50, he's right there." Cause he doesn't lay out super wide. He's kind of a taller bull. His tines kind of go up. And, this whole week I've been on Facebook and I don't know if you're part of any of these groups, but these people were like, "What do you guys think this bull measures?"
Yeah. The Great Alaska Hunting, whatever, or yeah. I looked at a couple of those.
Yeah, so I've been showing Kyle these. I'm like, what do you think this bull measures? And it's hard to do by a picture, right? But reading everybody's comments, you kind of get an idea. And I've seen bulls. My bull last year was 48 inches, but he had 3 brows. So kind of judging it off of bulls that I know what they measure. And I'm like, oh, he is so close. If he's 50, he's like there. Like we kind of put him into this range of 48 to 52, and it's like he's too close to call. Like if I'm gonna worry about it and I can't count brows, I'm not gonna pull the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
So this bull is just slowly walking out. At this point, he's about 40 yards. Kyle's up in the tree, and this bull's grunting every step, ripping apart brush. And he walks out into the opening, and I'm on the ground, and I do a really loud grunt right at him, and he stops. And he just slowly turns his head. I'm up on the stump, so I'm like perfectly eye level with this bull, and he's looking right at me, 30 yards, perfectly broadside. And I'm just looking at that rack, and I'm like, oh, I can't tell. And so I've got my gun. I can still see my reticle through my scope, and so I put it on the bull's chest, and I'm like, I can't tell. Then I'd look at his rack, and then I'd look at his chest, like I can still see. Put the gun down, look at the binoculars. Kyle's up in the tree. He's got a pair of those Swaro like range finding binoculars, so he's got really good glass, and we just can't tell. We can both see for sure that he has 2 brow tines on his right side. I don't know, something with the light, the ways those 2 brow tines were configured, you could tell he had 2 on that right side, but I just couldn't put a third one on. Couldn't really see his left side, and I'm just standing there. The bull's still looking at me. I've got that paddle, so I'm just kind of waving it back and forth. I've got a piece of brush. So I'm just shaking this bush just so he knows that something's still there, kind of give him a little bit of movement. And man, I mean, at this point, Kyle and I are talking to each other like as loud as you and I are talking right now. And this bull doesn't care. Like you get like his eyes are just like rolled in the back of his head. He is just so ready to fight, so ready to go. And I bet that bull stared at us for 5 minutes.
Wow.
He just stood there in the open. I could have shot him the whole time. Kyle had his gun in the tree. He could have shot him the whole time, but he was just so close to 50, and we couldn't see the brows that we opted not to pull the trigger. And he starts to walk off and just keeps grunting. Wasn't scared, wasn't, concerned. So I grab that paddle and I walk out. I feel like Jim Shockey. I put that paddle and I'm like walking out, grunting at him. And Kyle's like, hey, man, I think we can come back and get this bull tomorrow. No need to go after him. And looking back now, that was probably really dumb to go chase a really rut crazed bull out into the meadow with a paddle.
Yeah.
But he just walked off and kept grunting and then snorting and ripping up trees. So super cool experience. Kyle climbed out of the tree, just, oh, dude, so awesome. Fist bumping, just super stoked that the whole week led to that. And then just being so close, but just not knowing and not being able to pull the trigger. I mean, if we had shot that bull and he had died close, easy, 300-yard pack out on a well-groomed trail right to the raft that we could float out the next day. But so close, but super cool. And then that's all that learning we were talking about, like learning the calls and learning the terrain, what to look for, how they react. That grabbing that canoe paddle was like a last minute thing that I thought of listening to a podcast that Adam Grenda was on. And he was saying that he uses that to imitate bull raking. I was like, oh, I'll go buy one, like $20. And I think that played a huge part in it. Cause if you use that compared to even like those bull like megaphones or even a stick, it just sounds so much more realistic. Playing around with those really long drawn out cow calls versus just these really short ones with a lot of voice and inflection and stuff, like all these really weird up and downs. It's not just one long continuous note. Playing around with that, and honestly recording a lot of videos of myself and Kyle calling on that hunt, and then both of us listening back and being like, oh, that, I don't know how realistic that sounds. Let's try changing this up a little bit or a little bit shorter. And then, yeah, just all, coming to that moment and having that cool experience. And it feels better not knowing, like, and in one way it hurts because it's like, I really wanted to shoot that bull. Like that's how, feed the family for the year. But it's also knowing that I didn't necessarily miss out on an opportunity because I couldn't tell if he was legal.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I did everything I could. It'd be like coming up on a ram, and like maybe he's not full curl, but you can't tell how old that ram is.
Yeah.
So it's like I did everything I could, but just the animal wasn't legal, or I couldn't tell if he was legal, and I didn't want to take the chance because I don't want to lose. Shoot a sublegal bull, turn yourself in. You're still going to have to do everything you would with that meat and take care of that animal the same way. If you're taking it home, and you just have to turn it over if you shoot a sublegal. So it's like you'd have to go through all that work just to turn it over. You'd lose your tag. Maybe pay a fine, or sometimes some people lose gear over that kind of stuff, right? So I'm not going to even take that chance. I'm going to play it safe. Just learn from the experience and go back next year, and maybe he's a little bit bigger.
Yeah. It's really easy before the hunts to say all those right things, but then we get tempted in the moment, and you have to reinforce over and over and over again, because if you're in that moment and you do the right thing, you still then have to do the right thing again, and then again, and then again. It does become easier, but still there's all those temptations. And if it is a new hunt or a different hunt, or it costs more money, and all of a sudden it's like, man, I'm sure it's fine. You start to see something that's not really there, and you just do it, and it ends up being bad. So it's nice that you made the right call. It's good that in that moment you made the right decision, and you weren't so desperate that you cut some corners. So but that's not easy to do. Not easy to do.
Yeah, especially at that point, that was the last day of that trip. I'd been doing all those evening hunts. I think that then I'd had probably close to 20 days in the field, I think. So it's like being that long in the field and having that kind of opportunity. It was so bittersweet. Like I was so close, safety off, finger on the trigger, but it's like, I just can't do it. I just gotta learn from the experience and move on.
Yeah. Well, what else you got, man? Coming up on an hour here. Got some good stories in there. What else you got for this upcoming winter?
I guess I forgot to mention I'm going on a blacktail hunt in kind of the middle part of November. I've never hunted blacktail before. This is kind of a last minute trip that one buddy brought up to me. He said, "Hey man, let's go do this trip." And I was like, "Yeah, let's go do it." I found another buddy. 3 of us are going, figuring out logistics. Original guy actually had to drop out. Found another guy, replace it. We rented a cabin out there for 5 days.
Nice.
So some place to stay. I don't know, weather could be nice, could be really bad. Finding transportation there. It's going to be a long boat ride. But yeah, that'll be super fun. Trying to shoot some deer in the rut. I'm honestly just trying to put meat in the freezer. I'm going to shoot the first legal animal that comes in. I can shoot 5 deer, I think. So
nice.
Just trying to shoot as many as I can. Got 5 days. We've got 2 residents, me and the other guy. He's already shot a deer this year, so he can shoot 4. The other guy coming in is a non-resident. He's just going to try to harvest 1. I would be very surprised if we all, filled our tags, but if we can get, 2 or 3 deer out of the group, that'd be awesome. Bring some shotguns, maybe try to get on some sea ducks, and just enjoy our time out there. So I'm really looking forward to that. And that was another big thing too, is finding somebody that you really hunt well with, finding a good hunting partner. My wife and I hunt together a lot, and we really enjoy that. But having a buddy like Kyle, I mean, he and I were just like, that was our first like big hunt together, was that float trip. And we're going to Kodiak. He has a brown bear tag next spring, and so I'm going to be spending 10 days with him there. And then now we've got this trip coming up in November. But finding somebody that you really balance well with. Kyle's really gung-ho. He really wants to get out there and do this stuff. And I tend to be more of a cautious person out of the groups that I'm with. And so I'm kind of like, hey man, let's hang back. Let's do this. We can both kind of play off of our strengths and our weaknesses a little bit. and getting along well with some. We were both one of those dudes, and we were talking about it. Like, nobody likes the person that's down to do anything. Like, oh, dude, I don't care. What do you want to do? Let's do what you want to do. And he'd be like, well, I don't care what I want to do. What do you want to
Yeah.
do? And so it's like he and I are both so similar like that. We hunt really well together and
Nice.
complement each other. So, I mean, I'm already planning stuff for next year and just with him and trying to figure things out. And it's cool to now have that kind of that partner to do stuff with.
Yeah.
So yeah, really looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's getting down to we're starting to get to like pre-rut time down here, and last year Abby and I said, we're going to shoot as many deer as we can in the Alpine. We have 8 tags between us, so shoot as many as we can. It's funny that we have not got one yet, and Southeast Alaska is just known for the Alpine deer hunting, and it's the best. But sometimes stuff just doesn't happen, so it's that. If you can get one, excellent. Be totally happy and content with that. Know that there's going to be variables, and if it is a situation where you can have a hot streak or get some down, then that's awesome and take advantage of that. But yeah, that's what makes it interesting. If it was as easy as just showing up and getting them, then it wouldn't probably be nearly as fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been watching a lot of videos, from anywhere, anybody hunting blacktails. And I've been practicing. I got a call and I've been, practicing some fawn bleed or like fawn in distress and
Mm-hmm.
like doe bleeds and stuff. And I just really want to call something in, even if I don't shoot something, calling it in. I love hunting animals that I can call in, whether that, be elk and turkeys back home or moose or deer, just ducks, things you can call in. I really enjoy being able to communicate with that animal and being able to bring them in, within bow range even, and
Mm-hmm.
just bringing them super close and being able to, you know, kind of have that moment with that animal. I'm
Yeah.
super excited about.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being on here, man. Really appreciate it. Give a plug to your podcast and Heather's Choice and all that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, the podcast my buddy Keaton and I have called the Young Guides Podcast. Just kind of getting things rolling again. He and I during the guide season gets really busy, so we don't have as many episodes coming out, but putting out 1 or 2 a week. Having guests on there, fishing, hunting, having guides, biologists, local businesses, just folks that we want to share their background or what they're doing, and maybe teach some folks some things or a thing or two, kind of be educational in that way. And then, yeah, back at the grind at Heather's Choice, getting products back in stock and getting people back out there eating healthy and feeling good on the mountain. We've got some seasonal packaroon flavors. Packaroons are our little coconut cookies, like dehydrated macaroons. And we've got some pecan pie, Santa's coal, candy cane, and what's the last one? Um, Cranberry white chocolate. So we got some seasonal flavors
Nice.
out there. So check those things out, and they make great stocking stuffers.
Perfect. Good pitch. Cool.
Yeah,
Thanks,
yeah,
man. Appreciate you being on here.
yeah. Thank you, Jeff. I
All right.
appreciate it.
See you.